Nieta,
Yes, ma'am.
have you spoken with Mr. Scott? Is he attending the meeting? I know he's the chairman of the.
Mr. Simpkins, I
Yeah.
did probably about 30 minutes ago.
Okay,
He has the numbers and passcodes. He was having computer issues, but he should be phoning in. And that was about 20-30 minutes ago.
okay. Mr. Middleton, Ms. Bernie, how are you all today?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm blessed, thank you.
Absolutely wonderful.
Do y'all think we should go ahead and get started, or because I know Mr. Simpkins is the chair of the board, so he's usually the one that's overseeing it. You want to give it a couple of more minutes?
Let's give it at least another minute, see if he. Because he didn't contact you and say he was not going to be here, right?
That's correct. He did say he was going to be calling in.
Well, let's just wait a minute. He might be having a tad of technical difficulty.
Mr. Simpkins just phoned. He is about to dial in just a moment. He was having technical difficulties.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. This is Brian.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so we can go ahead.
Yes, sir.
We need to call the order of specialized assessment meeting for May the 10th at 2 p.m. Sorry, I'm being a little tardy here, but I had the wrong passcode. Is everybody on board?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Bernie here.
Ms. Bernie and Mr. Middleton.
Middleton is here, yes.
And that's our members for the specialized assessment. I said it had 9 folks present. Who else is joining us?
Ms. DeAntonek is here, Mr. Simpkins.
Good. Okay.
Mr. Simpkins, this is Brian Funk with the assessor's office here.
Okay, Brian. All right, but as long as we got our committee, Scott there?
Scott is here. Scott is here. We also have Terry Vujis and Nancy Greer and Miss
Okay,
Coleman.
good. Okay, great. All right. Okay.
There's a lot of feedback.
Yeah, I'm getting it's a lot of noise coming from somewhere. Not interference, but other conversations in the background. Anybody know where that is? Or can we stop it?
It's sounding okay right now. I guess if everyone
Yeah.
can make sure they're on mute if they're not speaking.
Okay. All right. Scott, on the specialized assessment, we've got so much here. I'm gonna let you jump into this thing and see where we're going and what we need to do with it. If you'll do that.
Or if you want to go ahead and start with your approvals of the agenda and the minutes, and I'll follow with those
Sure.
discussions.
Yeah, if we could, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Is there a second? Mr. Middleton?
Yes, sir. I had to unmute. I second. that
Okay,
motion.
good. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes and approve the agenda and the minutes from the last meeting. Everybody had copies of those?
Yes, sir.
Good, okay. Motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting?
So move.
move, Mr. Chairman.
Good. Second?
Second.
Those in favor, good, thank you. Those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes. Minutes approved as written. All right, sir. Mr. Roundtree.
All right. Thomas, could you pull up the exempt property digest file that Keldrick sent you? So the first item is just the presentation of the exempt property digest for this year. And we started this last year after a review of the DOR regulations that we do have to approve the exempt full digest annually. This first page is the summary of that information. Of approximate 35 parcel increase from the prior year to this year on exempt properties, which is a mixture of things, the ones that y'all approve at every board meeting leading up to the digest, and then any parcel that's considered public property. We don't submit that for your approval, but if it's on a verified list of property owned by the state of Georgia or the city of Augusta, that's automatically coded as exempt property. So this sheet really just shows you the summary of what categories values from the prior year to the current year are, and how many parcels are in those specific categories. So there was a change of about $47 million, give or take, in the exempt digest. And I think, if you look through that and study it, the bulk of that is just information that we corrected on primarily educational property related to the Board of Education this year. So not a big shift in the exempt digest, so to speak.
Okay, well, where it shows the public property changed 20 up 29, what what is that? City-owned property, city-acquired property? What is
Yeah, and I'd have to look through the details of it. Usually the majority of those changes are acquisitions by the Augusta, Georgia Land Bank or the city of Augusta specifically.
Okay.
That's typically the main purchaser of property for public property.
All right. Okay. All right.
Well, Scott,
Yes.
are you saying 47 million, an increase of 47 million in exempt properties?
In the overall value, yes. So if you look at the count, there's only a change of 35 parcels from last year to this year. But I believe the commercial team reviewed a handful of schools where we did not have all of the buildings sketched and valued. And those are, of course, large buildings. So there was a significant value increase added to the digest, and mainly coming from the educational section of our exempt properties. If you see that educational line near the bottom for E6, approximately 29 million of that change was related to schools, either new construction or typically older construction that we had not yet noted on the record.
Okay. All right, thank you. I apologize. My computer has been giving me fits, and the guy that's been working on it just left about 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
So probably behind on a lot of different stuff. Where do we need to go next?
So the next section we
Well,
can
I
go.
would like, before
sure.
we move on, can I ask a question?
Yes.
I just want to make sure that I'm looking at it correctly.
Okay.
Under the first column says grand total, and the next column where it says 2020 count, that's the number. So like under nonprofit hospital, is that saying there were 18 of them?
So so the 2020 count was last year's parcel count for the exempt digest, and then adjacent to that is the 21 count, so the current count. So for the nonprofit hospital, we were at 18 parcels last year. We're at 18 this year. There was no change in that category.
So that means there were 18 different hospitals that were nonprofit.
It's parcel count, right? So
Parcel.
So a lot of these, there's only I guess 2 hospitals in that category, or 3 that we have actually. So we've got the VA and University, and I guess that's it now since St. Joseph's sold to University. So they have several parcels all around their campuses that encompass the overall property.
Okay, I got it now. I'm glad to clarify that, because I was like, where do we have 18 hospitals?
No, not 18 hospitals, certainly. We don't even have that many here, but that's just the parcel count.
I'm clear now.
Yeah,
Okay.
there are a lot of properties around the VA, aren't there, Scott, that comprise some of this?
Yes.
Yeah,
The majority of these parcels are around University Hospital. Since they have 2 campuses, of course, the one on Wrightsboro Road and downtown, and then just a few for the other hospitals. And I believe most of the medical college are categorized as E6, so that they're not in that nonprofit hospital code.
Okay. All right.
Would that include these satellite locations scattered around the city?
So I think most of these are really just relative to the actual hospital location.
Okay.
For this category of exemption, it has to be an actual hospital property with hospital beds in it. So if Doctors Hospital, University Hospital had another property elsewhere, it would have to meet the criteria of some other category, such as purely public charity or something to that effect. So this would just be for the hospital parcels specifically.
Okay, thank you.
So now,
Alright.
like under cemeteries where it says 63, that
Yes,
would
ma'am.
be separate cemeteries, but it includes a lot of
Absolutely.
small cemeteries.
There are a lot of cemeteries around town. So this would be privately owned and publicly owned, and privately managed and publicly managed, of any type of cemetery that's in the county.
Got it. I'm clear.
Okay.
Okay. What's next, Scott?
All right. So Thomas, if you'll pull up the board work for the SAO committee, page 1 of that, we have our historic rehabilitations for this year's digest. We've got 2 Part A's for approval. The first being a small residential home in Harrisburg, and the second is an apartment building renovation on Green Street. Both of these have received their preliminary certification from Historic Preservation, and we're identifying here what their preliminary values will be during the rehab process. So for the Part A approval, the preliminary value is the bolded column. So the Fenwick Street home will be frozen at the $12,000 value there. And the 922 Green Street apartment building will be frozen at the 444,742. And they will be at that level until they submit their Part B frozen value. And we'll submit that when it is received from the applicant. We have 3 Part B approvals. 1008 Broad is a mixture of commercial, residential downtown. I believe the main tenant downstairs is the Southern Salad Restaurant. And we also have the Tax Slayer headquarters at 945 Broad, and an apartment building rehab on 13th Street, right across from where the, I guess there used to be a Subway there on 13th, near the Sacred Heart Church. And this is an apartment rehab. So all 3 of these have submitted their Part B approvals, that they met the requirements of the Historic Preservation Division. And we will be setting those as permanent until their timelines run out. And we also received both Part A and Part B approval that was completed through HPD after they did their renovations. And so they will be frozen at the rehabilitated value of our current value, $91,200. I believe that you see that one there at the bottom. That is all of the historic rehabs. Are there any questions on those?
Do we need a motion to approve staff recommendation?
Sure, and to your preference, if you want to do them all at once or one category at a time.
Committee, what you want to do?
Well, let's just do it one section at a time. Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the staff recommendation for these historic rehabilitations.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It passes, and we will send this and make this announcement at the big board meeting. Approved staff recommendation.
All right, and Thomas, if you'll go to the second page, please. All right, we have our second ever brownfield property application. We became familiar with this earlier in the year. And we have another application which, through our review, meets all the requirements of a brownfield property preferential assessment. This is the Beacon Station apartment building on Wrightsboro Road, right at the intersection with the railroad tracks and our ident by the dental school. They had a eligible expense amount authorized through Environmental Protection Division of just over $195,000. And, based on our forecasts for this particular property, they will meet those savings of $195,000 in taxes, probably the first year of the brownfield assessment. So we anticipate that this one will just last for one digest and then roll off for next year. So we are recommending approval based on the information provided by the property owner, that this should be a brownfield assessment for the current year.
All right. Do you have Andy, who is the owner?
So we have it split in a way based on the property leasehold. This is a property owned jointly by the Urban Redevelopment Agency of Augusta and CV Foundry Apartments LLC. It's a private developer. So typically this would be a partially exempt, partially taxable property, but as part of the development agreement with the city, the developer signed a pilot payment in lieu of taxes that is to equal the full taxable amount of the property as if it was fully fee simple owned. So we have 2 accounts on here, but it is one property.
Okay.
And we will apply this this brownfield assessment equally based on the values that we have in place to each of the parcels, so that they meet the full benefit of the 195.
Okay. Committee, would you give me a motion to approve staff recommendation?
Chairman, yes, sir. I'm familiar with the property and I'd like to accept staff recommendations on that one.
Second,
Second, all in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
Motion passed. Staff, we approve staff recommendation, Mr. Roundtree. We'll report that to the board at 4 o'clock.
All right. And Thomas, if we can scroll to the next page. This is the type of thing we're most typically familiar with dealing at this committee, are conservation use applications. We've got about 20 applications that are a mixture of new, renewals, and continuations. And for the most part, these are all standard conservation use properties. Most are either some kind of natural or managed timber, a handful with livestock. And if you're familiar with driving around the county, not a lot of actual farms, but mostly timber and some other type of passive agriculture. So for the majority of the list here, all of page 3 here that you're seeing, if you go to the next page, Thomas, and the majority of this page, we are recommending approvals for these new renewal and continuation covenants. There was one application we are recommending denial. This property is to the far west of Gordon Woods and Barton Village. And it appears to be leftover property from an attempted development. There doesn't seem to be any activity or use whatsoever, as if you just, if you own property and didn't go to it for 10 years, what would it look like? Oh, it looks kind of scrubby and unmanaged. The application for this property indicated that they were using the property as a green space buffer for Fort Gordon. The property owner did not provide any information to support an official agreement or arrangement with the fort, nor did we find anything of record with the clerk of courts that would identify it as such. So based on the lack of qualifying use that we could not identify, we are recommending denial of this application.
Mr. Scott.
All right.
Yes, sir.
I'm familiar with the general area, and I always thought it was a part of Fort Gordon. I thought it was a buffer from Fort Gordon. But the Promised Land community, are they located here, or what is that?
It is an organization that I've read that they are primarily focused on assisting with affordable housing through both building of residential homes and also financing, I believe, for affordable housing. So this was actually the first or second year that any and all 501c3s could apply and potentially be a conservation use owner. They had applied in 2018, but at the time did not qualify because the organization was not committed to conservation use purposes, which the law previously required. So since they allow all 501c3s to apply now, they did reapply for this covenant. But we still did not see that the property was being utilized in a manner that the code would require.
Okay. I think probably what we should do, committee, if you agree, accept staff recommendations in one vote and staff recommendation for denial in another. Instead of grouping
Mr.
it all.
Chairman, but before we proceed with that, I would like to ask one question of Scott, though. Could we move back to page 3?
Certainly. You want to pop up there, Thomas?
This is just for clarification on my
Okay.
part. I noticed at the bottom of the page, there's 1, 2, 3 Conley, the same person.
Yes, Myron
And-
Colley.
So they get, why is it 4 different ones? Maybe that's the best way to ask my question.
So the way that the property owner acquired the properties was more or less one at a time over the last 4 to 5 years, I believe. And so they're all adjacent to each other and utilized as, I guess, one agricultural unit. However, he does have a mobile home on one or actually two of the properties, and they're organized and contiguous in a way that he couldn't actually combine them all together
Okay,
because of the mobile homes being there and planning requirements. However, we did verify that the entire tract is where he raises his prize cattle. And he did provide documentation that, well, I guess we didn't need it after we saw the cattle out there, but he actually provided full documentation to show that that's what's going on at the property. He's got a large herd out there on his small little piece of land. So
that answers my question. I just noticed that and I was like, well, why wasn't it just one? But you've
Sure.
explained it.
and that is atypical, but that's just kind of the procedural way he's got to have it set up because of where those mobile homes are.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we accept the approval recommendations for the covers that have been approved.
Is there a second?
Hey, is a second.
Good. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Now,
we
Mr.
will-
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we support the denial of the one denial based on the findings.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And we shall report this to the full board at our 4 o'clock meeting. It's staff recommendation both ways. Thank you, Mr. Roundtree.
Thank you. And now we're on to exempt properties. So the first two there are owned by Trinity Baptist Church of Columbia County. They acquired this property last year and have opened a Richmond County campus. We are recommending an approval of this exemption as an E2 place of religious worship. The next three properties are owned by Walton Options for Independent Living. The property is at 942, 946, and 948 Walton Way. The property owner has been here for quite a while and apparently had just not thought to consider they were exempt from taxation. So this was the first time we've ever had an application for the property owner. It's an entity that assists the community and specifically people with disabilities. And they had an older building there that they're still in as an office, and one that they've since demolished, I think, within the last month or two. But as of January 1, both of those buildings were in place and in use. They've demolished the older building and are currently planning a new structure on the site. But the entire property is, as of January 1 and currently still in use for the main office for this entity. And we are recommending an approval for the exemption on the Walton Options for Independent Living property on Walton Way. This one specifically, if you have your packets, we don't have to read through it now, but there's more discussion on that in a summary later in your board work that you can reference. And the last item on this page was another ownership change of a church. The church is at 3131 Old Louisville Road. And the Journey Community Church acquired the property last year and it's turned that into their another, I guess, satellite campus. I believe this one might also be based in Columbia County. And we are recommending approval of this E2 place of religious worship exemption. If you'll go to the next page, please, Thomas. All right, the first two on the page are properties on Central Avenue. That was previously a charitable organization that owned it, who sold the property to another 501c3. The new owner has yet to put the property into service. I believe our commercial team field checked the property and spoke with the owner. They have plans to utilize the property, but no active use is currently going on whatsoever. So based on the lack of actual use, the recommendation from staff on that one was a denial. And the last item on the agenda for exempt properties is for a removal. And I'm sorry, you can't see the whole comment there. This property was originally approved many years ago as a parsonage for the Congregation Church of God, Christ Jesus. And during a field check this year, based on a fire field check where I guess a fire was reported at the property. So we reviewed it. It was determined that the property was actually used as a rental property. I believe even the tenant was the guilty party for starting the fire. The commercial team spoke with a representative of church who stated that it was not used as a parsonage anymore, that when it was livable, it was used as a rental. So we are recommending removal of the exemption on this property.
Okay.
I think that is it for the exempt properties, and I'll entertain any questions you may have.
Any question, committee?
No, sir. I would like to make a motion that we accept staff recommendations.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Bernie. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Disapproved, motion carries, and we shall make this report to the full board to accept the staff recommendation on approval and denial. Thank you, Scott. What's next?
What's next is Ms. Budges to discuss personal property cellular equipment specifically.
Good morning. Today we'll be discussing our groupings for cellular equipment. I'm sorry, Thomas, can you go to page 13? I guess it would be easier if you've seen the documents as we go through them. And if you'll just change that view.
There we
Thank
go.
you so much. So starting again, we'll be discussing our groupings for cellular equipment. We are requesting approval for several items on this document based on asset lives that we are seeing as the returns are being sent in, and also with Cellular Tower Solutions, which is the company that's doing our review / audits for 2021. And you'll see on this first page that Thomas has pulled up, we had a group 2, and we're changing that to group 3. And Thomas, if you'll go to that next page. All these we had in group 3. We're requesting that these antenna structures be placed in group 2. And the next page. This is the equipment, radio equipment. They, as we all know, that they phase out different like 3s and 4s and 5s. I think right now we're on 5. So they are phasing out the 3G equipment. And as they phase them out, we're proposing obsolescence for 2021, 50% idle for 22, and then we'll phase them completely out for 2023. And that also, let me just scroll down here. That also includes the group 3 core, which is right below that. It'll say see above. We're going to place that same recommendation, 20% obsolescence, 50% idle, and then phase out for 2023. If you'll go to the next page. Anything that is described as power equipment, we're going to place those in group 2. That is a new insert for this year. We had backup generators, which were power backup, but there might be other types of equipment that's just under a generalized category of power equipment. And we're asking that those be grouped as group 2. And the next page. The last thing, it looks like tanks. I'm sorry. My eyes are so bad. It is HVAC equipment that is within the small buildings. It's to, keep the equipment cool. And so we're changing those lives from group 3 to group 2. And I think that's the last of it. So what we will be presenting to the full board is the updated equipment grouping. And Thomas, if you'll go to the next page, we've just highlighted another one, please. We just highlighted the items that we've actually changed, but we wanted to show the specialized assessment that what they were and what they were changed to. And again, this is based on what we're seeing as economic lives on the returns and also with cell tower solutions. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer those.
Ms. W.
This is going to be reported to the full board at 4.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Ms.
Question?
W.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. By definition, what is the difference in group 3 and group 2?
It's the amount of depreciation that they get, depending on the acquisition year. So if you had an item that was purchased in 2020 in group 2, their depreciation or factor would be 0.92% of their cost. And if it's in group 3, it lasts a little bit longer. So they have a factor of depreciation of 0.95. So it's faster. They don't last as long. So it's a faster depreciation or factor on those items.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Let's have a motion to recommend approval to present to full board.
So move.
Second.
Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And motion carries, and we will let that report be made at the 4 o'clock meeting to the full board. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Scott, you got?
I'm here. That's the end of our staff recommendations for the specialized assessment and obsolescence committee.
Any of the committee have any questions?
Having none.
No, sir.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn then?
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we, having concluded our business, adjourn our meeting.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Appreciate everybody's participation and especially staff, all your hard work. Y'all have really done a magnificent job, and we thank you all for making our job a little bit easier.
You're quite welcome. We're happy to.
We'll speak to everybody at 4 o'clock.
All right. See y'all later.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right.
Thank you.